Hello and greetings to the lecturers and examiners. My name is Farrell Josh Sabin. My metric number is 196746, and today I will be presenting my final year project. Now, the topic of my project is the use of translation apps in German language learning. Now, in the background of studies, according to Colliner, translation can be defined into three parts: a process, a product, and a field of studies. And according to Gazawa, it is crucial to have the ability to understand the meaning of the source text in order to create an appropriate translation in the target language. Now, next is on the apps and applications. According to VAR, apps are being used in phones and tablets, while applications are used in computer and laptops. Apps is a software designed for a single purpose, but an application is a software created to perform all kinds of functions. Now, according to Armstrong, translation apps are software programs that are specifically designed on mobile devices to help translators perform professional translation works directly on their smartphones. Now, the problem statement. There are different types of translation apps. However, there is not a lot of studies being done on how translation apps can be used for education purpose, specifically for people learning the foreign language. The most common use of translation apps have been utilized by professional translator and travelers when they travel internationally. So this study is conducted to find out how the third year students of the German course in University Putra Malaysia, UPM, are using the advantages of translation apps to improve their learning on the German language. Now for the research question, there are three research questions for this study. Now the first one is, what are the translation apps that the student most frequently use? Question number two, how do the translation apps help the students to learn the German language? And number three, what are the difficulties of the students face when using a translation app? So all of this will be answered in the findings section. So research objectives. The first objective of this research is to determine the types of translation apps used by students in German language learning. The second one is to find out how these translation apps help the students in German language learning. And the third objective is to identify the difficulties faced by students in using these translation apps for German language learning. Now for the literature review. Now, according to a research that was conducted by Bong, Ang, Halim, and Matyanova, their research shows how students use this translation method for their reading skill, writing skill, speaking, uh, grammar, to better understand the grammar, to improve the grammar, and completing their assignments. And based on the result, it is shown that translating helps the students to better understand their textbooks, writing in German, speak better German, and learn German phrases. However, as the difficulty of the assignments increased, the students had become more reliant on the translation of the original German instruction of text. They become less, uh, they don't try too hard doing it on their own, and they just use the translation method instead. And the next one would be on translation errors. It is the biggest difficulty faced when using translation apps. And according to Villa and other researchers, this could be classified into five, which is missing words, word order, incorrect words, unknown words, and punctuation. And even according to the New York Times, some apps are better translating a certain language, but it's not as good when it is translating a different language. So it shows that the choice of uh, translation apps could also provide some translation errors, if according to these researchers. Now, next is the research methodology. For my research design, I decided to use a descriptive study to do this research. Now, the reason I do this is to, of course, to aim to answer all the objectives, and another one is to identify frequencies and trend. Now the reason I do this is because my research is more of a quantitative research where I collect my data and to from where I collect my data through surveys and questionnaires, and they would be later measured numerically to achieve the findings needed. For the theory framework, I decided to use the Western translation theory. Now, the main theme of this theory is equivalent. The target language must be equivalent to the source language. Equivalent here means that it must have the same meaning and the same expression between the two, the text that needs to be translated and the translated text. And the idea is that a translation of a text must preserve the context of the source language. And in order to do this, it is necessary to reinterpret the the grammatical structure because not all languages use the same grammar rule. So the reason I chose this is because translation apps should be able to translate text into the target language and at the same time convey the same message and express it in the same way. So if a translation app can do that, then the students could easily uh, learn the German language uh, without any difficulties. Now for the data collection, the data will be collected through a survey which is done via the Google form, and in the survey there will be given three sections: section A, section B, and section C. In section A there will be a multiple choice questions where the students will be allowed to choose more than one answers. However, in section B and section C, it will be a Likert scale question and the students can only choose one. Later, the data will be sorted out statistically, which means that for each questions, each answer will be observed and the numbers will be recorded. Now for the data analysis. The analysis will be done based on the statistic, which is the data collected before. And the answer that is chosen most for each question will be the determining factor in making a conclusion. So next is the chapter 4, the findings. First is the types of translation apps used. Now, the, the students have chosen throughout the survey, there are only three translation apps mentioned, which is DL Translator, Google Translate, and iTranslate. Among these three, DeepL Translator was used by all of the students, 23 of them, and the Google Translate was used by 14 students, and the iTranslate was only used by one student. And in table 2, the usage of translation apps, it can be seen that the students rely more on the translation apps when they are at a higher proficiency level. Even from A1 to A2, the usage of translation apps increased, as well as from A2 to B1. So this could validate the theory shown by the research in the first literature review, where as difficulty increases, the students become more reliant on this translation app. Next is the translation apps help in learning the German language. Now on the right is the most common answer chosen by the students for each question. Now all 9 of the questions in this section, the most common answer is strongly agree. Now, this only shows that the translation apps benefit the students a lot. As you can see here, it helps them to learn new German words, to pronounce new German grammar, and pronounce new German word, understand the German grammar, and they even use it to translate the text between English and German. So it is very helpful for them to use the translation apps when the German language. However, in the next section, in section C, the difficulties faced when using a translation app. The answer varies a little, and you can and as you can see, there are three sections where the students disagree with the second question. When I translate a word, it does not translate into anything. Now they disagree to this situation, to encountering this situation. So for this, we can conclude that when a student types a text in the translation app, it will give out a translation. Now, in the second part, the opinions are split between agree and disagree. When I translate a word, there is an error. Now, the reason for this split could be because of the the type of text that they use, the words that they try to translate, or maybe just um, the translation apps. Just this doesn't happen very often, but it still does happen. So there's also something to be looked at. And another one is when I translate a sentence into German, there is an error with the grammar. Now this also uh, has a split. The students have a divided stance on this between agree and disagree. So once again, it could be caused by the text that was typed into the translation apps, or it's just the translation apps, or the students just never encounter this type of situation. But it can be said that this type of situation does occur, just not maybe often. And the rest of the question, the, we can see that the students agree or strongly disagree with such as question number one. When I translate a word, it gives me so many options instead of the exact word. They strongly agree to it. The translation apps never give you the exact one word that you need. And the eighth question, when I translate a German sentence, there's an error with the word order. Strongly agree. The students, or you can say most of the students, strongly agree that there will be an error with the word order when they translate a German sentence. So that is one of the difficulties that is commonly encountered. So in conclusion, the summary, the purpose of this research was to determine how students use translation apps to learn the German language, as there has not been much research done in the past regarding the language using translation apps. The research has managed to answer all the research questions as well as achieve the research objective. For future studies, similar future studies could be done on the usage of translation apps in learning a foreign language, or a research could be done with a larger number of participants to get more data and find a clearer result. A change of research method from a quantitative into a qualitative research could also be done to gain more data and more precise exact data. So that is all from me. That is all for my final year project presentation. Thank you.